So in part two of our ISU simulation here, guys, we're going to add a list of questions. Now the list of questions is going to be in a two-dimensional array. Now we worked with these recently, last week, so hopefully you're a little bit more comfortable with them. And I'll explain this array as we go along. But it's going to store all the data for all of our questions. Now your array will ultimately be bigger than this because you're going to be having, up to 15 or maybe more than 15 questions, right? As will your list of image files here and the length of the QImage array. All right, so let's get started on that. Now one thing I've already added is another local or primitive data type called QNum. Okay, this represents the question number that we're on. Now when the game first starts, we're going to eventually be on question number 0. But before the game starts, or as it's loading, we're not even on the first question yet. So I initialize this to be -1, and then as we go to the first question, it'll advance to 0, and then we can load the first question. All right, but start it out at QNum -1. All right, so let's talk about this two-dimensional array. So I'm going to create string questions equals 2 brackets. Okay, now I'm going to initialize this as an array, and I'm going to fill the data in right away. So normally, guys, when you initialize an array, you have like the set of braces here. Now because this is going to be two-dimensional, I need another set of braces within this set of braces. All right, so let me just open this up a little bit. Okay, just like that, give myself some room, and now I'm going to put in my first question inside of here, which is going to be its own set of braces. Now, why all these commas? Well, they're in here as placeholders for the different parts of the question that we're going to see. And notice there's also a comma at the very end here. Right? Didn't like that. We'll fix that in a second. So this comma at the end is to separate each question as we go through. Okay, so there's like 3 commas in here and then another comma. Now, if those commas don't make much sense to you, just hold on tight. They're going to make sense in just a second here. All right, so a question is made up of the following things, guys. The first thing is going to be the actual question. Okay, so in this case, what's Charmander's main attack? Okay, and then after the first comma, I'm going to put the option A. Okay, which will be, is it flamethrower, or B, is it flame tail, or C, is it sword dance, or D, is it head zap? All right, I had to make that last one up. Obviously, flame tail is the right answer, so is that the first, second, third, or fourth? Okay, so the last thing we store in here, guys, is the number in quotes that represents the right answer. Okay, so 2. Why 2? Because 2 is the location of the right answer. So remember, this inner array has 0 as the question, 1 is the option for A, 2 is B, 3 is C, 4 is D, and then 5, part 5 of this question, stores the location of the right answer. So the location of the right answer is number 2 in this case, which is why there's a 2 here. All right, so we're not just storing the question in its 4 parts, but we're also finishing up by storing the answer. Now notice, guys, a couple things. Everything is in quotes, right? This is an array of strings within a bigger array of strings, right? So we need everything in quotes. We also need a comma to separate each thing along the way. This is really easy to make a mistake on as you go through. So just take your time to make sure you've got it right. If you miss 1 comma, 1 quote, then it's gonna break on you. All right, so if you understand the format of a question, let's put in our second question. Okay, so our second question has the same format. Okay, and obviously I've done this already. I'm just pasting it back in. So, take your time, pause the video, do whatever you need to do, but sort of manually type this out. I know it's quite a bit of typing, but, just take your time. So again, we have question A, B, C, D. Now the right answer for this question, what makes Jigglypuff sing, is the first part, right, or the first location, which is location 1, picking it up, which is why 1 is the answer down there. All right, so I'm going to dump the other 3 questions in all at once here, guys, and then I invite you to pause the video to finish this off, all right? So here's the rest of the questions, the other 3, okay? So notice too, guys, that at the end of each question is a comma, because I'm going to another question, comma, another question. Where I don't do that, of course, is on the last question, okay, because there isn't any more, so I don't put a comma there. Just like at the end of each question, guys, the answer location, this is the last piece of data for each question, so there's no comma like right there either. All right, but this is basically a two-dimensional array. So the first dimension is 5, because I got 5 questions. Now, you'll eventually have 15. But then within that is an array also of 5 in this case, which yours will also be 5. Actually, no, I lied, it's 6. Okay, so there's 6 parts to a question. So location 0 is the question, 1 is A, 2 is B, 3 is C, 4 is D, and then 5 is the location of the right answer. Okay, so 2, 1, which is A, 3 is C, 4 is D, electric, and then 2 would be Squirtle. All right, so that's probably the hardest part of this video here, guys, is just setting up that 2D array manually like that. If we had time, I would have shown you how to read this in from a data file, but we just ran out of time, so this is how we're going to load our questions up. All right, and you'll just have more than this. You'll have like 15 or maybe even more than that, hopefully, if you want to get like a really good mark. All right, so these are the two variables that we've introduced in this module: the questions array, 2D array, and then QNum. Okay, but we're not done yet though. So next, let's write a method that can be used to advance to the next question. All right, and then like we're going to, part of that job of that method is to assign each of these pieces of data to parts of the different controls that are already on the form. All right, so let's just come down here and we'll make some room around the mouse pressed area, maybe just below it, and we'll start creating this other method here called setQuestion. All right, so I'm just pasting that in there. All right, so so maybe the first thing we'll do before we advance to another question is to see if we have more questions left to go. So, you know, in my case, because I'm only allowed to go up to question 4, because remember it goes 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so the first thing I'm going to say after I'm going to give myself a bit more space here first. I'm going to say if QNum equals 4, then I'm on the last question, right? So I don't want to advance to the next question. So instead, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a J option pane pop up that says game over. Okay, now normally you have to import swing, but this template I forgot to mention already imports the J option pane. So I've got you covered there. Okay, so so we're going to say first of all game over, right? Then we're going to say like the next button, instead of saying go to next question or submit, we're going to change the text on it to say exit game, so it now becomes the exit button. All right, so it serves that purpose as well. And then we're going to return, which means we're done with this method. We're not going to go any further. All right, so this only happens on the last question. So now let's deal with typically what we do to advance to another question. Well, probably the first thing we want to do is add one to QNum, right? So QNum keeps track of which question number we're on. Okay, so when we advance to the next question, we can now take the parts of that question and locate it to the different parts of the screen. All right, so maybe we'll start with a for loop and take parts QNum 1, 2, 3, and 4 and put those in the different options. All right, so so first of all, we'll take part 0. Sorry, first we'll do this. We'll take QNum at part 0, and that's my question part, and put it into Q label. All right, and then we'll do a for loop. Okay, so the for loop would look something like this, going from 0 to 4. Options location x dot set text questions at location QNum x plus 1. Okay, and while we're at it, we're going to say options x dot set selected false. All right, so I feel like I should take a minute to explain what's going on here. Remember, questions is a 2D array, right? So there's the QNum dimension, which is which question number we're on, and then there's the second dimension, which is which bit of the question we are working with, right? So we know that bit 0 is the actual question itself. Okay, bits 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, if I come back up here, so bit 0 is like for the first question is this. Okay, bit 1 is flamethrower. Part 2 or bit number 2 is flametail, sword dance, head zap. Okay. So I've got a for loop that's going from 0 to 4, right? Because I've got my 4 G options, which go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But option 0 needs bit 1, right? Because that's flamethrower, that's going into A. Option 1 needs bit part 2, which is flametail. So whichever option I'm on, I need 1 plus that number is the text I'm putting into that option, which is essentially what we're doing down here. Okay, so we are saying Q options x dot set text questions at location whatever. So this is like option 0 sets question QNum 1. Okay, and then 1 is QNum 2. Okay, because it's always off by 1. All right, so that's that one little line of code. I just want to explain that. This here, set selected false, that means that we are unchecking that option. Okay, so if we're going to a new question, guys, we've just finished answering the question, right? So there's one of the 4 things that are checked. So this is going to uncheck all 4. So it basically resets the 4 dots so that they're all empty again, so that I can answer for the next question. We don't want the old answer to still be there when we go to a new question. All right, so that takes care of that part. And then I guess that's it for that. Okay, so why don't we, like, when we go in our setup, maybe what we'll do is we'll do a set question. So when we first set the game up, we'll call set question, and then, like, instead of question goes here, pick A, B, C, D, as soon as set question kicks in, it's going to go to the first question and replace all the text with the actual question. All right. So we also want to go to another question when we press the next button, right? So in mouse pressed, we'll deal with that next. Okay, so if hit button next button, then we want to go to the next question, right? However, what if it's the last question? Okay, so if next button's text says exit game, remember exit game goes on this button when we get to question number 4, and it says game over, exit game. So now I'm clicking on it, and it now says exit game instead. Okay, so instead I'm just going to quit the game. So system.exit 0. Okay, so that's just what we do with that button when the game is over. Now if the game's not over, then we're going to set question. We're going to call set question to get the next question. All right. Okay, so we're almost done with this part of the module. I believe what we have left to do is down in the draw department. So let's go down there next and take a look at this. So right now we're always drawing. Oh, I guess I did this part already. Okay, so this part's already been done, but I'll just re-explain it to you. So it used to say Q image 0. Okay, so now we got to modify that. So if we if we're not on a question, QNum is -1. Okay, so this, like when the game first loads, it's going to start running draw right away, and QNum is set to -1, and then it's going to basically generate an error because there isn't an image at QNum1. Okay, but if QNum is 0 or more, then we're going to draw the image for that question. Okay, so remember, QImage is a separate array of the 5 images of my question. Okay, so up here I've got my 5 images, which are loaded up: Charmander, Jigglypuff, Bulbasaur, etc. Right? So as QNum advances to the next question, I'm also advancing to the next image that goes with that question, because these are parallel arrays. All right. So basically when I call set question, what does set question do? Well, it advances QNum. Okay. So that doesn't just affect the text in the labels and the option buttons, but it's also affecting the image. So down here in draw, I'm basically saying, you know, if I'm on a question, then draw the image for that question at location QNum. All right, and that, my friends, should be it for this. I know I went pretty fast, so rewind the video, pause it, do what you need to do to sort of take your time and get this stuff in there. But I'm going to do a compile on this and make sure that this runs properly for what we've done so far. So this is, for me, it's ISU2, right? But you're still working on the same ISU file. So I'm going to run this and check it out. Okay, so there's my first question, right? So now instead of having placeholders, I've actually got a question here, A, B, C, and D. Okay, now this part doesn't work yet. It's not going to tell me if I'm right or wrong. We haven't done that part yet. But submit will let me go to the next question. All right, so next image, next question, next A, B, C, D. And it's going to keep going until I get to my last question. This is question 3, 4, and 5. Although this is question 5, but it's at location 4. So as soon as I submit, my question is at 4 already. So watch what happens to my submit button. It goes to game over, and then it says exit game. Okay, so now if I hit this, it now says exit game, so I will go system exit 0 and I'll leave. Okay, so did a lot of progress in that installation, or in that installment of the video series. In the next part, we're going to now read what the person chose from A, B, C, and D, and when we go to submit, it will tell us if we're right or wrong, and it'll keep track of our score. Okay, so that's coming up in part 3.